Hi, I'm Crystal, and today I would like to talk about steel rule dies. Now, this is a little bit of a niche topic, but if you are unfamiliar with these, I just wanted to talk about them for a minute. I was in a creative reuse store recently, and I made the tactical error of going into the shopping side, and they just had a wealth of steel rule dies. So I picked up this set, which had never been used. You can see where the price sticker was, but I can tell from the ejection foam that the die set had never been used. Now, this is a vintage set that was issued in conjunction between Sizzix and Stampin' Up, and it is a full alphabet. And I picked up this die set for $4. That is such a bargain. So I wanted to talk about steel rule dies in case you run across them in an arts and crafts thrift store, in a general thrift store, in a garage sale, or wherever you might see them. If you have got the right kind of machine to use these dies, I just think they are a vintage treasure and they can be real bargains. So I do keep a swatch book for my steel rule dies. I think I have every one I've ever purchased. I am not much of a swatch maker, but these dies are kind of bulky to flip through, and it's hard to see what the design is from looking at the die. But I keep a swatch book so I know, oh yeah, do I have an owl? I do. What size are those daisies? So I can use the swatch book to do that. So these steel rule dies, they really are easy to use, and you don't need much equipment. Now, you do need a manual die cut machine, and typically this is going to be a Sizzix Big Shot or Big Kick with a 6-inch opening, or a Spellbinders Platinum with a 6-inch opening or larger. There are some mini machines that will accommodate 2.5 to 3-inch wide steel rule dies, but those are very rare, and so I think I would look for the 6-inch opening or larger. You will need a pair of standard acrylic plates. You can see that mine are well loved, well used. I do a lot of die cutting. These plates are about 6 inches wide, and they are about 9 inches long. Now, the plates are a consumable. They do have to be replaced periodically. I do a lot of die cutting, and I can typically go a full year on one pair of acrylic plates. And that is really all you need. The machine, one pair of plates, the steel rule die, and some whatever you're going to cut. Usually it's paper, but these steel rule dies will cut almost anything. So you place one plate, you place the die, you place the material, you place the other plate, and then you crank it through. And that is all there is to it. So the process is really simple. When you can see these dies used, they are such a bargain. And you can see that the standard size die has a lot of space on the standard plate. So the dies themselves are typically about 5.5, 5 3/4 wide and the same tall. So you've got plenty of room on this standard plate. You do sometimes see long dies, and they do sell long plates, but those are not really necessary. You can use a standard cutting plate and just move it down a little bit. But you do sometimes see these extra long dies used or in the thrift stores. I have a couple of those. And what I find is that if I put the standard plates down, I can cut one part of the die, and then I just move everything down and cut the other part of the die. I've got the long plates, but I just never bother to get them out, so not really necessary. There's also a medium-sized die, which is exactly the size of the plate, or about 6 by 9. So you will see these sometimes. They cut a little bit larger image, and they take up the entirety of that standard acrylic cutting plate. So I've so enjoyed these steel rule dies, really get a lot of use out of them, and there are some pros and cons to it. The dies themselves are kind of pricey. That's why I'm definitely encouraging you to take a look at the thrift shops and the garage sales, because these are heavy and bulky to store, so people do tend to purge them. Now, the dies do have some variety of appearance. So these Stampin' Up! Sizzix collaborations all have a gray case. I've got a couple that came from a company called Fun Stamper's Journey, which I believe has since been bought out by Spellbinders. Those have a green case, but they still have that steel rule die with the black ejection foam. And sometimes you see plain bare wood with the steel rule die and no ejection foam. Those also work. I don't have any. This is one of the very few narrow steel rule dies I've ever seen. Then we've got the standard Sizzix die. This is an older one. The older dies were a little bit narrower. So you can see this die is a little bit narrower. Works exactly the same, no difference. A lot of the Tim Holtz dies have that brown case. There are a few that have got a clear center so that you can see the material that you're cutting. You can see they were edging their way towards thin steel dies at that point. This is an original that came with the original Sizzix machine, which was not a roller but a press. It still works. Those have a red case. Then you can see the other major manufacturer was Spellbinders, and they all have this brown case. So the dies all work the same no matter what the exterior appearance. And the pros and cons of these are really that the steel rule dies will cut many sheets of paper at once. So if you want a lot of some image and you have it on a steel rule die, you can cut, I usually can do up to 3 pieces of paper and get nice sharp cuts. Those cuts are precise every time. So there's never an issue of, well, should I use the magic mat, or do I need a shim, or maybe I need a magnetic plate, or should I tape the die down with washi tape? No. You just roll this die through the machine and the cut is perfect every time. You can cut a wide variety of materials. So I know that the thin steel die manufacturers say that you can cut chipboard and fabric and cork and plastic and all these things. But if you use thin steel dies, you know that that can be a struggle sometimes. What I have found with the steel rule dies is that it is not a struggle. If the material is thin enough to go through the machine, then you can make a precise cut in that material. Now, you never want to force the machine, ever. So if you start rolling the plate and the die into the machine and you're really having to work at it, do not force the machine. You can break it. But as long as you're not having to force it, as long as that chipboard or cardboard or fabric or plastic or cork or leather is thin enough that you don't have to force the machine, then that steel rule die absolutely will cut it and you will get a nice precise cut. So I do enjoy that aspect of these steel rule dies. I would say the big drawback, of course, is the cost of buying them. Although if you're thrift shopping, they're a bargain. And the other drawback is that they are heavy and bulky to store. So you do need some space to devote to storing the dies. But I find that the pros outweigh the cons. And I'm so excited when I see these in the Creative Reuse store or elsewhere that I can just barely hold myself back from buying all of them. But I have left some for the rest of you. So that you can also have this wonderful experience of the steel rule die. Now, there are very few new dies made, and so thrift shopping is really the way that you're going to see these. Sizzix does still make a few new steel rule dies, not many, but a few, and they seem to be the only craft manufacturer who is still doing this. It seems like Spellbinders has completely given this up. And I completely understand. Like I said, these are heavy. They would be expensive to ship. They're expensive to buy. And really, the craft world has mostly moved on to the thin steel die. And I also enjoy the thin steel die. But if you've got the machine that will take these thicker steel rule dies and you come across them, I just want you to know how they work, what you need to use them, how easy they are to use, how fabulous they can be if you see a design that you like. And just encourage you to give this some consideration. So I know that a lot of crafters have been in paper crafting for a really long time. So you may be completely familiar with this process and how all of this works. But if you are newer to die cutting or newer to crafting, you may not have seen this process in person. So just want to call out this bargain opportunity since I ran into this plethora of vintage gems at the Creative Reuse store, and encourage you to keep an eye out yourself if this is something that interests you. So have a wonderful crafty day, and thanks for joining me.